you have, being in the House with the rest of the House members, you guys control the purse strings. You do all the budgeting bills. In 5 sentences or less, can we depend upon you to vote against any budget bill that includes funding for the implementation of ObamaCare?
Yay!
That's a lot. You have the ability to defund anything that goes on with any of the government departments, including the IRS and HHS. And if you throw a budget bill out there and say, well, I like most of it, I really don't like this, but I vote. If you vote in favor of that, you're voting in favor of Obamacare.
Please give the House back to the Dems that way, sure.
What's that?
Doing what he wants would give the House back to the Democrats.
So that's the debate, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you believe that what I believe, which is the Affordable Care Act is a supremely flawed bill, we're starting to see that as it gets rolled out. You know, we started with the 1099 bill in the House of Representatives, the bill that basically, there was a provision in Obamacare that said every business-to-business transaction, there had to be 1099 forms filed with the IRS. Most people said, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. The House passed a bill, the Senate passed the bill, and the President signed it into law, repealing a major provision of his own law. Then the American people woke up. Remember, this was all part of the process that we had to pass the bill to find out what was in it.
Yeah.
So we've been finding out what's in it. 1099, people didn't like it and stripped it. Then we found out about the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which is the group of 15 unelected bureaucrats appointed unilaterally by the President to determine what the reimbursement rates are to physicians and hospitals, and then ultimately who gets what care. So if you get denied a hip replacement, you don't get to come to your federal representative. There's 15 unelected people that don't report to me that ultimately make the decision. We put forward a bill in the House, stripped the funding for IPAB, passed the Senate, and the President had to sign it into law. Major provision of his own bill gone. Just last month, you heard him come out and say, hey, the employer mandate, we're not ready for that yet. We need to get rid of the employer mandate for a year. The House of Representatives said, well, that's very nice. There's a current law on the books that says there has to be an employer mandate. Rather than you do it unilaterally, why don't we pass a law that actually says no employer mandate for a year? We took that vote, passed overwhelmingly with the House. Republicans and Democrats voted for it. The second bill we put forward is said, okay, if you think it's good for the businesses not to have to comply with the law, maybe you should give individuals the same ability not to have to comply with the law this year. In other words, if Home Depot down the street doesn't have to comply with the Affordable Care Act, maybe the one-man shop at Ace Hardware shouldn't have to comply either. And so we put that up. 25 Democrats voted with all the Republicans in that bill, and that now is over in the Senate. And we'll see what our senators do with that. I'm sure they're getting plenty of questions about it at their town meetings. My concern with the notion that we can stop the Affordable Care Act as a part of our budget is two things. Number one, operationally, the Affordable Care Act's benefits, if you will, are actually not a part of the discretionary line items of our budget. There is money in there for implementation for HHS, so Kathleen Sebelius' department and so forth, that we have access to. But in terms of the big behemoth of federal exchanges and so on, we don't. That's not in the budget. It's kind of like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Those aren't in the budget either. We don't debate that. Those are called mandatory or entitlement spending. So one of the frustrating things is 65 cents of the dollar that we spend is actually stuff I don't even vote on, isn't even debated. So if we all vote, if the budget went away tomorrow, if the government shut down tomorrow, it would not necessarily stop the Affordable Care Act from being implemented. So I'm not a budgeteer. If my buddy Paul Ryan were standing here, who runs the budget committee, he could probably articulate this better. But he's basically said the budget by itself is not, you're not able to unilaterally stop the bill just through the appropriation process. Now, the second concern I have with that strategy is you have to be, at the end of the day, if you're going to take a hostage, you got to be willing to shoot it, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not willing to kill the hostage.
That's okay, kill it.
So what I would say is, when I look down the road and I say, if I'm gonna say, I'm voting against any budget that doesn't stop the money for HHS or what have you, I've gotta be betting on the fact that the president's gonna cry uncle and capitulate and repeal his own bill. My concern is that the alternative may happen, which is what the other gentleman suggested, which is we have a 15-seat majority in the House. Nancy Pelosi's strategy this whole year has been to make the House of Representatives look dysfunctional. Why? Not because she's worried about beating me. She might. But she knows that she has a very slim window of coming back as Speaker, and she needs 15 seats. And to put this in perspective, when I was in the minority the first 2 years, we had to win 86 seats to get the gavel from her. People said you'll never win 86 seats. We won 86 seats. We have a 15-seat majority. Their goal right now is to go into all the suburban districts and pick who our candidate will be, just as they did in these U.S. Senate races, so that ultimately we have a weaker horse on election day, and they can pick up the 15 seats they need and have total control of the U.S. House of Representatives, total control of government the final 2 years of his presidency. I'm not convinced that after a month of the government being shut down, when our senior citizens don't get their Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, and the troops don't get paid, that my position will be a sustainable position. Now, it's not that my position isn't one that I believe in, but at the end of the day, this is all a public opinion battle. So where is the public? Well, majority of the public is opposed to the law, but a majority of the public is not in support of a full repeal of it. So I would argue a better strategy is to expose the law. We don't have to make anything up. Expose the law for what it is, which is a very, very bad law, a flawed law, and the best thing to do is to repeal it. But
Replace it with what, though?
we
There's
have
nothing to replace it with.
No. We have a series of replacement bills. First of all, well, I don't want to digress into another law, but into another question. But I'll be happy to talk to you afterwards. Or if you have a question here, I'll get there. So
You risk alienating the people who brought you to power in 2010. The conservative voters who caused that landslide are going to react unless you take a strong principled position on this.
and so what happens so why should the president repeal his law?
Well, isn't he all about doing the right thing?
Well,
Put the pressure on
look, I agree with you on the law, okay? I agree with you that I think it's a bad law. But I also recognize he never faces another voter. He's never up for election.
You do.
I understand that, but hear me out here. Who's got more to lose in this fight? Take me out of it, okay? I go find something else, live a happy life, okay? You can find a different representative. Take me out of it. If I'm the President of the United States, I got nothing to lose in this battle. You want to shut the government down? Shut it down. And right now, we have to borrow 50 cents out of every dollar. We only have 60 cents. You have to have 65 cents to pay Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Why is this important? Because some of my friends, my fellow conservative friends, say, well, if the government shuts down, we'll just prioritize spending, lay off a few bureaucrats, and people will just have to tighten their belt.
What about our parents?
And I say, you know what? That actually sounds kind of good. You know, tighten our belt. And then you actually figure out how bad financially our country is. We only have 60 cents out of our dollar. So if you're not borrowing in this country, you can't pay current Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security recipients. Now, do you want a military? Because that's not included. So if you paid current Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security recipients, shut the government down, you'd still have to find 5 cents somewhere. You'd have to disband the military. You'd have no money for education, roads, bridges, or anything. So
We can have all of that, just get rid of ObamaCare.
okay, but
One law.
here's the
Get
thing.
More people will die in the streets.
I'm just asking you to follow this, because it's a lot easier to sit at home and say, because I've watched the same stations you watch, and I see my colleagues up there beat their chest and say, by God, this is the time to take a stand, and you know, it's now or never, and on and on and on, we're going to hold people accountable. But let's look at the facts. Because I want what you want, but okay, I'm Barack Obama. And I know in week 2, when Social Security checks are to come out, there ain't gonna be enough money to pay everybody.
You mean you can't pass a law that it speaks strictly to the exclusion of Obamacare and go on your way about that? We'll fund everything but Obamacare? You can't pass a law like that?
Sure, I can pass anything. We've passed 40 repeals in the
And
House.
make the Democrats in the Senate and make this guy at the White House vote on that stuff. Get them on record and go on offense. Don't be playing
And
defense
how
on these
many
guys.
weeks, and
Pardon
how
me?
many weeks would you go without paying Social Security? And how many weeks would you go without paying the troops? And having a young lady walk into my office whose husband's over in Afghanistan, who can't pay her mortgage because I'm shutting the government down, because I don't like a health care law, and she looks at me and says, "Sir, I don't care if you're in a fight with the president. I don't have the money to pay my mortgage. My husband's over there risking his life. You guys need to get your act in order. Washington, D.C.'s all screwed up and is a mess. I don't care. I think all you bums ought to be thrown out. I'm pissed off. You need to pay my husband. He's over there fighting for our country." And then I got a senior citizen walking in and say, "Doggone it, I paid into Social Security. I can't pay my rent check, can't pay my utility bill." I'm just suggesting that when you get into a fight, been in a few in my life politically, you got to make sure you're willing to kill the hostage you got. And I am not convinced yet that that's a hostage that we should take headed into this fight. At the end of the day, if I think it's possible, okay. But I think because he never has to face an electorate, because he never has to go before the voter, and because he cares so much about his namesake bill, he'll call our bluff. And he'll wait for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And if you think things are bad today, if you never want to hear a word about the IRS again, you never want to get to the bottom of what happened in Benghazi, you don't care about the NSA tapping your wires, then give the entire federal government back to one party, and you'll see what happened in the state of Illinois happen at the federal level.
There's about 3 times in a row there you kept on saying things about Social Security checks not coming out and the military getting paid. You know those things happen when the government shuts down, right? It's like the National Zoo and the Smithsonian that closes. I've got family members who served in the military, and the last time the government was shut down, they were still paid. I've got families that are on Social Security, and the last time the government shut down, they still got their direct deposit. You keep on saying those things are not going to happen, but those are not things that shut down whenever the government shuts down.
But let me clarify so you understand. When we get to the October fight, okay, it will be a trifecta. Because the reason that this is all being talked about is because our debt limit and the expiration of our spending authority are happening at the same time. So that's why you're saying people are talking about tying these together. And so you can't continue to spend if you don't have spending authority. And so you're right in the sense that Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, as I was talking about earlier, we don't vote on those. So even if we don't pass a budget, they keep going. So we haven't had a budget in this country for 4 years, and everybody's been getting their Social Security check. We don't need a budget for those people to get paid. You do have to have spending authority, though. And this fall, we hit the debt limit. So that's my point. At the debt limit, once you hit the debt limit, if I've stuck my stake in the ground and said, you got to do extra, I'm not giving you a debt limit increase, then you only have 60 cents going into the treasury of every dollar you're spending. And so then you do have to prioritize where the money goes. And then you couldn't just keep paying people in the military and the Social Security and everything else if you don't have the spending authority. That's why we have to have these votes on the debt limit.
Would you vote for our younger vets that are over there, protecting us and our parents? What's going to happen to our parents one of these days? That's what I'm concerned about.
You should be.
I am.
All right, let's go back to questions in the hopper.